Damiana is quickly becoming one of my favorite herbs. It's relaxing, but it's also an aphrodisiac. It's stimulating and can make it hard to fall asleep, but it's also an integral part of my lucid dreaming tea recipe. It improves my mood, which some people say is due to increased dopamine. So, what is it? Is it relaxing? Is it a stimulant? Is it an aphrodisiac? Is it a dream herb? Does it increase dopamine naturally? Today, we're going to look at all these things from a traditional herbal standpoint as well as a scientific standpoint. And I'll run a few tests here in my lab and do some experiments on myself and figure out what's going on. Oh, and at the end, I'll give you the recipe for the aphrodisiac tea that my girlfriend's recently become obsessed with, and also give you some anecdotal evidence from how this works in a man's body as well as a woman's. So, Damiana is native to Central and South America, where it's been used as a nervine, a mood tonic, and an aphrodisiac for quite a while now. Most people say it's a stimulant and you shouldn't take it before bed, but some people say it's relaxing, and I think this confusion comes from the herb's biphasic nature, which means it changes its effects based on the dose. Typically, lower doses are more relaxing and higher doses are more stimulating, which is the opposite of kratom, or commonly mispronounced kratom, where typically a lower dose is considered stimulating and a higher dose is considered more of a sedative. And in my experience, that's pretty true. But what's most important to know about Damiana is that it's not a true stimulant. So it doesn't work on the adrenal glands in our body like caffeine does, which is why in animal studies it's shown to increase sexual behavior and energy, but not increase symptoms of anxiety. So in my experience, it is harder to fall asleep on Damiana usually. But once I'm asleep, I can stay asleep very easily, and I actually probably sleep longer and better than when I don't take it. And unlike caffeine or other stimulants, if I'm having a hard time falling asleep due to the stimulating effects of Damiana, they're very easy to counteract with a more sedating herb like valerian root or a bitter tonic like a decoction of mugwort. Where Damiana is different from mugwort, and one reason I love it so much, is you can use bulk dried herbs from the herb store and still get great effects because Damiana doesn't work off the volatile compounds or the fragile monoterpenes like mugwort does that we covered in my last video. It works off the deeper, heavier fractions of the plant, which are the phenolic compounds and the flavonoids, which are a type of phenolic compound. These compounds are a lot more heat stable and shelf stable, so the Damiana you get from the herb store is probably going to be fine. And because they are a little heavier, they actually extract better with a longer steeping instead of a traditional, just drop the tea bag in. I've had the best effects with very low heat below boiling for about 15 to 20 minutes at, maybe 200 degrees or so. You'll have to forgive the lighting and the fact this doesn't show up well on camera, but here's a little chromatography test. So what we have here in the middle is Damiana that's been extracted for only less than a week in high-grade ethanol. And you can see there's quite a distinct band right there. If we zoom in on this one, this is a Damiana tea. Sometimes these fluoresce, but they don't really show up on the camera that well. This is a long steep tea. I accidentally mislabeled it. And the longer steeping gets quite a stain on it, unlike the short steeping. This is steeped the way most people steep a normal tea, where I just basically poured boiling water over a tea bag type of steeping. So, of course, we're seeing a lot more extracted from the ethanol, which is to be expected. But you can see it is dramatically different from nothing to at least something. And there's even more on this than you can see on camera, but still nothing you can really see with the eye on this one. This is steeping for 15 minutes at about 200 degrees, just below boiling. So that kind of backs up the claim that, a little bit longer steeping tends to be more effective than a normal traditional tea steeping. But you don't need to get too hung up on all that. It's a very forgiving herb. If you just steep it for a little while, you're probably going to get some good effects. So I've linked a study in the description to Damiana in rats, which showed that in male rats, it increased their ejaculations as well as decreased their refractory period. So basically, it gave them multiple orgasms and sped up the time in between those orgasms. Now, one contributing factor to the refractory period is a decrease in dopamine, and Damiana is said to increase dopamine. Well, we're not entirely sure if it does that directly, because there haven't been a whole lot of studies done on that where you actually look at dopamine levels in an organism after taking Damiana. But that information is likely extrapolated from the fact Damiana contains an MAOB inhibitor. It's called acetyl 7-methyl ether, and I've only ever read it, so I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing that correctly. An MAOB inhibitor is something that slows down the enzyme that breaks down dopamine. So it doesn't necessarily increase our dopamine levels directly. It just decreases the thing that decreases dopamine. And I believe most of the claims you'll see in herbalism or on supplements saying that Damiana will increase dopamine are likely just extrapolations from this finding that it contains this MAOB inhibitor, not because we've actually seen studies that show dopamine increase directly after taking Damiana. Not to say it doesn't happen, just saying that those studies aren't out there that I could find. And I did find some preliminary studies that are examining this, but they're not published or peer-reviewed yet. I've linked another study in the description that shows the effects of Damiana on the hormonal system. It does seem to help modulate the hormonal system without acting like an actual hormonal drug, because testosterone and estrogen are very linked to each other in the body and also to the sex drive. And there is an enzyme called aromatase that turns testosterone into estrogen, and particularly in men, with age, testosterone tends to decrease and aromatase tends to increase. And Damiana is an aromatase inhibitor. But it also has effects on the estrogen system. So if the effects come from flavonoids instead of from monoterpenes like they do in mugwort, then that means that the light volatiles like hydrosol and essential oil shouldn't have any effect on the body really. And it's not like I really needed to test this, but I decided to try it anyway just to distill Damiana and see what would happen. And when I drank the hydrosol, nothing really happened. And I actually did get a little bit of essential oil, and I took some of that undiluted, which you shouldn't do and I don't recommend. It didn't taste good, it wasn't comfortable, and it made my mouth feel very like mentholated, like cool and numb, and it tasted very strongly of Damiana. Like I could taste it with my whole body, like it was in my blood, and like burped up some Damiana flavor really strong, like I could smell it everywhere. But it did not have any effect on me other than that. And flavonoids can break down with long boiling. So I also made a decoction and boiled that down after a couple hours, and it would have been a huge dose, like way more than I ever would have taken normally. But I tried some of that, and it also had a very blunt muted effects, not like a normal, 10-15 minute steeping at low heat. So, was that really necessary to test? Probably not. The information's out there, but I like to prove things for myself and kind of get to know the plant by, seeing what I learned and seeing if it works in the lab. It's a simple lab, and I don't have complex or high-tech equipment in here, so I use myself as a guinea pig because I'm too nice to test it on my actual guinea pig. So you could use just Damiana as an aphrodisiac, and it does work quite well, but I find it works the best when paired with cacao and or caffeine. So this is a recipe I wrote up here if you want to screenshot it, and you can replace the water with coffee if you'd like. Feel free to play with the recipe. Here's a quick video of me making it from a YouTube short. Crush up some rose hips, crush up some rose petals, grind up some ginger, then add the secret ingredient, then add some cacao, sweeten with molasses and maple syrup, just a little vanilla syrup, and some rose syrup if you can find it, as much cinnamon as you would like, and I throw in just a little bit of nutmeg. Cayenne adds a very pleasant warmth. Stir in some cream or almond milk. Pour it through a strainer. A little coffee goes well, and the caffeine can really only help. A pinch of salt deepens the flavors. Give it a taste test and see if there's anything you want to adjust.
Now, boys and girls, what do you think that feels like?
Don't be discouraged if you don't have that many ingredients. All you really need are the Damiana and cacao, maybe the coffee, but if you can get the rest, it tastes so good. So I was going to try to keep this part as clinical and scientific and PG as possible, but I had to leave the lab and come work by the light of a single candle, so now it looks even creepier. But I'll say this about Damiana from a male perspective. I am 32, so I'm not very old, but I'm definitely not a teenager anymore. And when I drink Damiana, I feel like I am again. I feel like the rats in that study.
There are softer oak trees.
And as for my partner, when she takes it, she feels like the moment leading up to climax lasts like 10 minutes and stays right on the edge. And then when it finally gets there, it's like way more extreme than normal. So, all in all, it does work very well, but we normally use the Damiana cacao and caffeine. Also, the other herbs in there that are for flavors that make it actually taste really good. So, it's like a nice ritual before. But she's actually the one who encouraged me to make this video because she was saying that women are usually overlooked, and this is something that could actually improve a lot of people's lives and their love life, their relationship. It definitely, it's not placebo, it's very powerful stuff. So I hope that it helps you and that you get a lot of great use out of Damiana.